Okay. Hi, everyone. I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Tashina Bird, and I will be moderating this panel. I am an assistant city attorney for the city of Dallas, where I am in the general counsel division, advising the city departments, the mayor, and city council. This panel is about how to land an amazing job outside of OCI. Before I introduce the panelists, I want to give a huge thank you to DWLA, SMU, UNT, and A&M Law Schools for putting this event together. In the interest of time, I will be briefly introducing our panelists, even though these women are worthy of more time. I was told that I needed to tell them that they were amazing, but I think their credentials speak for themselves. So I will go ahead and introduce Nicole Munoz first. She went to UTSA for undergrad and then to A&M for law school. She's currently practicing as an associate with Figari and Davenport. The second panelist would be Abigail Earthman. She went to Baylor undergrad, received her master's and Juris Doctor at Texas Tech and her LLM at Georgetown. She's currently practicing as an associate at Winstead. And the last but not least is Alana Matthews. She went to undergrad at Colgate and received her Juris Doctor at SMU, and currently is the Dallas Stars Vice President and General Counsel. We will go ahead and jump right in. So my panelists, I will ask Nicole first, and then the other two can join in after her. Nicole, what field did you think you were going to go into while you were in law school, and how different were your expectations from reality?
Yeah, this is a great question. So my background in undergrad was in politics. I worked for the Texas legislature during the 80th and 81st legislative session. So I thought I was going to go into public interest, lobbying, and politics in that field of law. And I did an internship between my 1L and 2L year within that field, and quickly realized that the practice of law is so complicated already. Adding politics into it just was not for me. So I kind of did a 180, and now I do commercial insurance and business litigation, working for corporate America, so complete private sector, which is something I really didn't expect. So I would say just keep an open mind, get internships in the areas you think you're interested in, so that you eliminate that and don't make that mistake once you graduate.
Abigail?
Yeah, so I was a little more focused in what I wanted. I think you mentioned that I got my master's in personal financial planning. I did that because I knew I wanted to go into estate planning. I knew I wanted to do estate planning, but I never knew I wanted to do litigation, which is even like a more niche portion of estate planning. So I currently practice litigation exclusively related to estate planning. So 50% of my practice is related to arguing with the IRS. What fun. So I fight exclusively for estate tax and gift tax, and I just find that incredibly interesting. And then my other half of my practice does more local fiduciary litigation. So will contests, breach of fiduciary duty lawsuits and stuff like that. But I never thought I would go into actually litigation. I always thought I'd be a planner. I just didn't realize how much I enjoy kind of in the courtroom, in the more litigation style.
So now to me, I thought I was going to do something completely different. I was really influenced by my family prior to going to law school. I come from a family of doctors, and while I tried to take the medical school route, I quickly stuck with my inner voice and followed my dream of going to law school. But I thought I was going to do health law, and I tried to expose myself to that my first year of law school, and quickly realized that it wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be. Although it's a wonderful field for other people to pursue, it did not work for me. And I was always very interested in sports and sports business. And so I listened to that and quickly pivoted to focus more on sports and corporate structuring, corporate business law, and whatnot. And I made that I didn't make that decision until my second year of law school. So my first year of law school, I was full gung-ho. I'm going to be a health lawyer and do all this other stuff that I absolutely do not do any of right now. So I definitely made a pivot.
Thank you all for those insightful answers. The next question will go to Abigail and Nicole. So describe your career path, including the first job after you graduated from law school.
So as I mentioned, my career path's a little funky, right? So I started with, well, when I started undergrad, I majored in psychology and I thought I would be a psychologist, and I graduated during the Great Recession in '08. And so my first job, I remember I worked for a nonprofit and I made $24,000 a year. And I realized that I had to get a second job in order to like even sustain life. So I decided to go to law school. And when I got to law school, I said, well, if I'm here already, I might as well get my master's, because there was like a twofer, buy one, get one free in my view. So I dual degreed. I did the JD and the master's in personal financial planning. And then I realized that I wanted to practice tax. So I thought, why not add another degree and get an LLM? And I actually do recommend that for people who do want to specialize in tax. At the JD level, you do not get enough tax, even if you took every tax course there is: income tax, trust and estate tax, corporate tax, partnership tax. I'm not sure any law school offers all four of those. Most people who want to specialize in tax do get an LLM in taxation. And so I talked to a lot of professors and they said, go get your LLM. And I'm not going to lie, the LLM costs more than my entire 3 years of JD plus my master's combined. So it's an investment, right, that you have to choose, but it's an investment that I believe paid off. So I packed all my bags and moved up to DC to go to Georgetown, and I somehow convinced my fiance to go with me. There's a weird story that comes there that I'll tell offline if anyone's interested, how he didn't want to tell me he was moving to DC and I didn't want to tell him I was moving to DC, and we were going to break up. And then we found out that we're both moving to DC. So it was very weird. Has nothing to do with career path, I promise. But so I figured out that after that I really wanted to get back to Texas and practice law. But I went through OCI at Georgetown, and naturally a lot of the firms are Big Four accounting firms at OCI. They do a joint program with NYU. They're mostly tax-based, and not a lot of them are private practice. So I kind of saw it as a means to an end. I accepted a job with a Big Four with an intentional pathway to say, I'm going to take this job, but the day one I take the job, I'm going to start looking for private practice jobs in Texas. One, because I was licensed in Texas and I didn't feel like waving into the DC bar. And two, in DC, you can throw a stone and hit a lawyer. I mean, there's just so many of them, and the marketplace is just super competitive. So that was my first job out of law school. It was weird, right? Because I wanted it to be successful at that place, but I also knew in the back of my head it wasn't a place for me. So it was a means to an end. And I think that's important because sometimes you do have to see your longer term goal. Where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 3 years? Is this a stepping stone or is this a permanent place? And for me, it was a stepping stone. For me, it gave me enough to put on my resume to say, you know what, I've been in the job for a year. I know what it's like to work with human beings. I'm personable, but this isn't what I want to do. And I was very straightforward on that interview that I had during my first job when I started interviewing with private practice. I was very sincere. I said, it's just not for me. I really want to practice law and I really want to dig in there. So that was my first job, but I think that I was very happy with the fact going into it that I knew that I wasn't necessarily going to keep that job for the rest of my life.
Thank you. And Nicole?
So this is a really good question again, our career path leading up to jobs. So I knew I was going to go into law. My major in undergrad was political science with a legal studies minor. And again, I worked in the legislature, which was kind of like DC. You throw a stone and you could reach a lawyer at the Texas Ledge. So I was surrounded by lawyers. So I went to A&M. I'm not from the DFW area. I'm from San Antonio. And so I moved up to Fort Worth it was transitioning from Wesleyan to A&M. And I didn't know anybody. And I had decent grades. I was on law review, and I had internships in between summers. I had I know it was over a dozen OCI interviews, and I thought, okay, these are going to be great. I'm at least going to get a couple of offers from that. And just because of the market and how many people were applying, just didn't work out that way. So I knew right around my 2L year that if I was going to get a job, and that was the goal, right, I needed to hustle and network. And just not knowing anybody, I just needed to start getting out of my comfort zone and going to networking events. So my answer to this is a huge plug for bar associations. I promise I'm not getting paid to say that, but I can trace my first job to at least 5 lawyers that 5 lawyers before then that introduced me to someone who introduced me to someone. And I'll never forget, I applied to be the DAYL student liaison my end of my 2L year. And I met Aisha Rafi, who was in DWLA for a long time, who took me to about 3 different networking events in 1 week. I'll never forget. There was a DBA event, there was a DWLA event, and there was a DAYL event. And introduced me to so many people who then introduced me, to 5 people later to Charlie Gearing, who was president of the DAYL last year, and who just forwarded my resume one day while I was studying for the bar to his coworkers. And at that time, he was at a litigation boutique firm in Frisco, who just kind of took a chance on a brand new baby lawyer, hadn't even gotten my bar results yet. And that's honestly how I got my first job, was just by going to networking events constantly. I knew I wanted to litigate because I'd done the DBA and the DAYL law student. They have judicial intern programs. I knew I wanted to litigate, but I just didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And that first job, especially at a litigation boutique, just introduced me to so much. And I continued to network throughout my first year. A lot of people stop after they get that first job because they think, okay, that's the end result, that's the goal. But continuing to follow up with people, I eventually met someone who was a recruiter for my current firm, and kind of wanted to share this with you guys. During my OCIs, I thought I was going to get at least, like I said, 1 or 2 offers. I applied to interview at the firm that I'm at now, at Gary and Davenport. They rejected me. They gave me a form rejection, letter via email I had, and rejections, by the way, so many. My fiance is also a lawyer, and we met in law school. We were constantly applying to jobs throughout law school and kind of had boxes of rejection letters, but eventually both landed great jobs. But was not discouraged. And I know months later, after I had started at Gary and Davenport, I told them, you guys know you rejected me, right? And because they said that I was a great associate, and I'm still there now, so I must not be doing a terrible job. And they had no idea, because they're like, look, when you're interviewing, especially as a law student, we get hundreds of applications, hundreds of resumes. It's all about, we just kind of went off, GPA, law school ranking, and interviewed a few people, and sorry, but you're here now. So, my career path is a lot about, applying, rejection, and persistence and resilience. So that's kind of where I got to now.
Thank you for that. I would also agree. It is a lot about relationships to find these jobs. So the next question I will have is for Alana. Did you switch jobs from your first job, and how did you end up where you are now? And then I will have Abigail follow up on that.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I did switch jobs. I am currently Executive Vice President of Business Operations and General Counsel for the Dallas Stars, or NHL club. In my current role, I'm split on the business side as well as retaining general counsel duties on the legal side. So I have a very non-traditional path, and my role is ever changing in how much I allocate towards the law, how much I allocate towards business. But my first job out of law school was in litigation at a firm in downtown Dallas called Wilson Elser. And I had a bit of an unusual, maybe challenging pathway as well, because I actually was a transfer student in law school. When your first year GPA doesn't carry over, so I didn't have marks to kind of stand on initially to try to get jobs. But I did get a firm job right after graduation in litigation, which I was really excited about, because I thought that it would give me some more tools for my arsenal, so skill set that I could use when I eventually did end up in-house. I knew I was going to be in-house somewhere. And I loved being in litigation. I was very surprised by that. I never wanted to do that, but I loved the thrill of it. And it definitely made me a much more confident person, an attorney, having to be in litigation right at the beginning. But I switched because I knew that my real passion was sports and going in-house and being a business person, executive, as well as being a lawyer. And so during my first 2 years of the firm, I really just kind of had a whole other job on the side, just kind of hustling and networking. And that led me to, fortunately, get an opportunity with the Dallas Stars, which grew into the role that I have now. So I definitely switched paths and kind of have a bit of both on the transactional and litigation side.
Thanks, Selena. So mine is I'm going to go back a little bit because what I didn't mention is my 2L year, I did clerk at 2 law firms. Actually, one was a financial planning firm and one was a law firm. And I got offers from both. And I actually rejected both. And I want to encourage the people that are listening today to be okay with not only being rejected, but rejecting someone else. This particular law firm was in Amarillo or Abilene, and I just couldn't see myself there for my future. And it also wasn't, it was kind of a myriad of practicing between oil and gas, litigation, and a little bit of wills and trusts. So I think having that confidence to say that I'm still going to find the job that I want, the specific one that I want, and the specific career path that I want, takes a lot of energy and confidence in yourself. Have confidence in that you have a good resume, that you went to law school, that you passed the bar exam, wherever you are in that career path, and being comfortable saying it's okay to not accept a job. Because I know, at least for me, my parents were always like, you need to be financially stable. You need to pay off your student loans. You know, this is a 6-figure job, Abigail. Are you crazy? Like I think my dad literally cried when I was like, I'm not going to take this. Instead, I'm going to incur $80,000 of debt and go to another school. So I think you have to be okay with that. So once I finished at the Big Four and I realized, so it took me 372 days, and I count them because it was a very tiring process once I got to the Big Four to getting a private practice job. And I approached it a couple different ways. So I did mass mail campaigns. I sent probably 100, if not more, letters to law firms who never heard of me, who I did not have a connection with. And I realized that was probably not the best way to go. So I tried a different approach, which is trying to stalk my peers and classmates who did have a job that I liked at a firm that I liked. And this particular person, I actually mentored in law school. And he worked at the firm that I do now, and he has since left. But you know, I kind of stalked him and I said, hey, do you have any openings? Because I was in a very niche practice, right? I'm trying to be a litigation wealth advisor. I mean, it's like super small. Even to this day, I can put on on one hand, how many people practice at the level that the shareholder I work for practices at for litigation and wealth planning. And it took a while. He held onto my resume. I followed up with him and I said, here's my updated resume. I mean, this was like 4 months going down back and forth. And eventually said, hey, we actually do have a spot that's open, and I've passed your resume along to the recruiting shareholder. So we have a recruiting department, and the shareholder that actually is the hiring person. And very much like we are now virtually, I did my interview virtually. I don't even know if I had pants on. I think I was just wearing a top. But I never actually even flew there or anything. I got the job 100% virtually. But it took 372 days, and it took persistence of trying to find the right pathway in. And clearly for me, and I think most people will say this, mass mailing campaigns do not work. Try to find someone that you know at that firm. If you want to work at that firm and you have like, I want to work at Winstead, call me first, right? I know you now, or we don't know each other in person, but call me first and say, I listened to your presentation for how to land a job outside OCI. I really like Winstead because of X, Y, and Z. Can we meet? I'd love to know about job opportunities. And it could be that there is nothing available at the time, but I have like a running list and a stack of resumes on my desk because I get a referral bonus for every person that signs on to Winstead. So you better believe that when there's a posting that comes up, and if I look through my stack and I'm like, real estate development, I don't practice real estate development. The first thing I'm going to do though is look at my stack and see if there's someone there, call that person, see if they're still interested, and then pass their resume directly on to the recruiting department. I think that was a little more than you asked, but.
No, thank you so much for that. The next question, I guess I will ask all 3 panelists. Did you participate in OCI? If not, why? If so, what was your experience? Did you get any callbacks, rejections? Kind of, can you explain the process for us? So whoever wants to take it first, have at it.
I'll take it first. Yes, I participated in OCIs both on campus at A&M, and then I think it's still going on, the Sunbelt OCI program. And I think for my on-campus OCIs, I had about 6 or 7, and then Sunbelt, I had a ton as well. And in that, it was a great experience. I mean, look, I had a few awkward interviews. You're going to have a few awkward interviews. It's not the end of the world. But and I did get callbacks, and I did get one offer that I did take to go summer between my 2L and 3L year, and then was just told, look, just because of the market, we're not hiring any brand new lawyers. We'll keep your resume. Call us when you've got 2 to 3 years of experience. And I just want to say, I remember when I was a law student, if I had $1 for every time I got told, we don't hire baby lawyers. You need, 2 to 3 years of experience. I mean, I could have paid off my student loans. Not really, that's a lot, but still, I mean, and it was so discouraging as a law student. I'm like, so wait, I need experience to get experience? It makes no sense. But I just remember for OCIs, the law schools do the best they can and they get the firms there, but the firms just interview so many people. And even in the callbacks, and even when I got rejection letters from all but one that didn't take me on for that summer, they just said, look, it's not anything personal. There's just so many. And, you're fighting with a bunch of people that have a better law school ranking or better GPA or, I do remember being told, look, we just had to interview so many Hispanic people. And so you were one of them. I forgot to mention that when we were preparing yesterday, but, that was interested being told, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it wasn't a bad experience, but it was a numbers game. And, I really do think it helped me for my interviews down the road, because I think I had 12 to 15 interviews in such a quick span that the next time I had a real substantive interview, I did so much better. And I would just say, even if you have a ton, that's great, but you might not get anything, and you might get a summer internship or summer clerkship, but it may not pan out, and just not to be discouraged.
Yeah, I can jump in next. Oh my goodness, it's like I can barely remember what we did back then, and it wasn't really that long ago. But I think I participated in OCI, and I think I pretty much got rejected from everything, which is fine. But I think for me, I had really strong academics, and it really wasn't the academics on my resume. It was more that I wasn't from Texas. I had nothing really on my resume from DFW, like the area. I'm not from here. I didn't go to school here. I transferred to SMU Law. And so I remember a lot of questions during OCI about my resume, and, what people were asking me, what can we lean on that you're going to stay in the Metroplex? Like, if we invest in you and give you this opportunity over one of your peers who are from here, who are clearly committed to staying in the Metroplex, why should we go with you? And I didn't really have a good answer for that, other than, this sounds like a great job and I'm really smart, I'll take it. But so I don't think my OCI experience was very successful. Also, being a transfer student, I had a different experience than others who, are at one school for all 3 years. But that really didn't deter me. I never really had it in my mind that I was going to be a traditional attorney on a traditional path, however we define traditional. But I just, participated in it, but I didn't put all my eggs in one basket. Like, I'm going to only get my job from the OCI experience. I was networking and Googling and, like you say, kind of following people in the industry I wanted to be in, or people who had interesting careers that I wanted to talk to and learn about, as well as participating in OCI. And I really leaned on my career services department at SMU Law School. They were wonderful. I went there for emotional support, being a transplant to Dallas and having no friends and nobody and no family, and being a very northern person who did not fit in and did not understand any of the school rivalries or hand signs or football games or anything. I did not fit in at all. So I leaned on my career services department, as well as going through OCI, but as well as other mechanisms to try to get a job at a law school. And it eventually was successful, but it takes persistence, and it takes a resilient mind and attitude that, you know, I was confident that I was going to get something eventually, and whatever I ended up getting, I was going to be incredibly successful at due to my own persistence. So I think I just got rejected from everybody that I had OCI, even though my resume was really strong. It just didn't quite fit what they were looking for. And that just didn't bother me. I was like, okay, well, you know, I'll show you. But and now a lot of those firms that I think rejected me, I hire their lawyers now to do our work for the Dallas Stars. So it's kind of an odd, funny little circle.
I think that's interesting that you say that, Alina. Let's be honest, OCI is awkward, right? You're sitting in a group of, you're sitting in the waiting room next to, like, I see Claire, who is helping put this on from DWLA, was on law review with me, and I'm pretty sure we sat next to each other, ready to interview for the exact same person, for the exact same company. And you're thinking to yourselves, is her GPA higher than mine? Is it lower? Does she have more credentials than I? I mean, it's really a competitive process, and it's super awkward because these are your friends that you're trying to compete against, that you do shelf checks with, and you're writing your law review articles with. So I took OCI as an opportunity to be a better person to interview, right? Some of them are really awkward, like Nicole mentioned. I had someone walk out because their rental car keys were like stuck. And to be quite honest, from the interviewer's perspective, they're there. Now I do OCI, right? So they're there all day, especially if you're towards the end of the day. I mean, I'm going to be quite frank. They're tired, right? You're working for 30 minutes. It's your job to convince them to stay almost. What makes you special, what makes you unique outside of your resume. And I had a really hard time doing that. I'm just weird. I'm kind of like you, Elena. I'm not calling weird, but I'm from Massachusetts. I had no ties to Texas and under my undergrad. I took a 2-year stint off from undergrad to go be a psychologist or a quasi-psychologist at a nonprofit in Tennessee. You know, they were just looking at me like, what's up with this? That said, I did get both my 2L internships through OCI. And I think OCI, your second year, is a little more fruitful than your third year. Because at least when I was doing OCI, I'm a bit old, so I think I did it in like 2010 or 2011. No, 12. I'm not that old. It was very much centered on get your job your 2L year, which is just weird, right? Who gets a job before they even graduate law school? The whole concept's just completely bonkers, if you ask me. So don't get discouraged by OCI. It is successful for some people, but you know what? A lot of my best friends that I went to law school with got their jobs through OCI, and they are 100% different firms right now. I don't know that many that are still at the firm that they went through OCI with, clerked with, and all the way through. I mean, it's because you don't know what you're getting yourself into, because when you do a summer internship, you have like a person who's helping you out and feeding you work, and they're taking you to dinners, and they're, making sure you're happy or whatnot, because it's an investment for the law firm. But you don't really get the reality until you start your job. And I think most people that I've talked to have said OCI was great to land me that kind of first initial job. And I like taking the pressure off that I didn't have to go solicit letters, kind of like how I did. And it sounds like, Elena, you did that, Nicole. But at the end of the day, it's just a stepping stone. And so if your stepping stone's different, like going to a big 4 company beforehand, if OCI works for you, that's great. But if you need a different stepping stone, I think that's completely acceptable as well.
I just have one thing to add to that, Abigail, that I forgot to mention. I ended up getting a job in between my 2L and 3L years through a multitude of different things. There was a program at SMU, I had contacts, etc., whatever. And it was to intern with the Texas Rangers baseball club. And it was a very highly sought after internship. And I was like, oh my goodness, I nailed it. I've got it. Dream come true. I'm going to be in sports. And Kate Cassidy, who was the general counsel for the Rangers at the time, she called me, I believe, like 2 months before the job was supposed to start, and canceled it. And was like, I'm having a baby. I'm going on maternity leave. There's nobody else here. I don't have a job for you. Good luck. And I totally forgot that I lost my dream internship with the Rangers between my 2L and 3L year. And she's no longer the GC there, but she became a good friend of mine, which again is DFW is a small little circle here that we all know each other. But I had to go back to my career services and be like, I don't have a job. Like, what do we do now? Like, I lost this great opportunity, and kind of restart it. And, it's a good message that like, you don't know what's going to happen, and just don't get discouraged. Keep at it. It's going to all be okay. You will get through this. You will get to the next season of life, and it'll work itself out the way it's meant to. Just keep pushing at it, because I had the job that everybody wanted, and then they just canceled it. So, things happen.
So I have one follow-up on that, Elena, based on what you said, is that I have a lot of 2Ls come to me who say, I couldn't get anything through OCI and I don't have a summer internship. What do I do? And the number one thing I recommend them is go volunteer yourself. I will take free work any day of the week. If you come to
Yeah.
Winston and you're like, I just want to help you out, you don't have to pay me. I just want to, I don't even know if my firm will allow that, honestly, but a lot of places will be happy to take free work. And it shows your determination and the fact that you want to get experience, and the fact that you don't care about the money, you care about the experience.
And
Yeah,
if I
that's good
could
advice.
add on to that, so my firm will sometimes, like if I do get those emails, my firm will sometimes take on like an extern or, an intern. I mean, we try to pay them because I remember what it was like to work for free. But one thing, if you could also ask, hey, are there any articles, any law review or legal treatise articles that you need to write? Because I have like a stack of topics that I'm supposed to eventually write. Do you need help with research? That would be invaluable. I mean, if a law student reached out, someone that already knows Westlaw, Lexis, to help out with that, because then that shows you're taking the initiative, you understand what that lawyer needs, and you'll gain knowledge from that subject matter. And just when we look at resumes, we look at one, is this person competent? Two, what would it be like to work with this person? So just want to build on what Abigail just mentioned. That's another tip, to email someone instead of please give me a job. It's more, do you need any help with anything? Any law review, article writing would be great.
Thank you all. I will say I did not participate in OCI. I was a part-time student. I worked full-time. I felt like I didn't have the GPA. So I basically did all of my networking through the alumni. I went through career services. There are other ways. So this kind of segues into our next topic and our next question. How did you learn about job opportunities outside of OCI? How did you look up job postings? Did you have mentors? Did you network, organizations? Did you go through career services? So I will say all three of you, can you answer that for me?
I'll start if you don't mind. I'll jump in first. The jobs in my field that I'm in right now in sports are very rarely ever posted. Like, they don't get posted, because if you post a job for a sports team, you will get thousands and thousands of resumes for people that we just do not have time to go through and sort out. And I'm sure there's plenty of qualified candidates, but we don't post jobs. So my job that I have now, which has morphed over the years I've been with the team, but it was not posted. They didn't have a job description. They didn't have a title. They didn't want to hire a lawyer. And so it was really it was really a job opportunity that I created through my own hustle and my own elevator pitch, so to speak, and being prepared and doing a lot of work for years before. And I know that might sound a little bit discouraging to students or recent graduates who are like, well, I don't have years to wait. But, I built it really through hustle. And I found the job opportunities, and I use opportunities kind of loosely because I built my own opportunity by really just reaching out to people who had jobs that were interesting to me or doing things that I thought I had the skill set to be a value add to. I really looked at it from a mindset of like, how could I help them? What do I have that could be a value add? They're not going to hire you just to pay you a salary to not contribute anything back. So what can I do for that person, and how do I connect to that person? Oh, they went to Colgate. I went to Colgate. They're alumni. They're a sports agent. They represent this player. I know that player's family, etc. Building a network. And it took a lot of time and a very thick skin and a strong initiative to be able to go out and build that. And one of those lunches / calls / meetings that I was rushing out of my big law job to take on a lunchtime break and make up the hours later, it turned into like, how do I hire you and get you in? Let's build a job around you, Alana. You have great ideas for our organization. Let's kind of make that into a job. And I didn't even have a title for my job when I started. They're like, what do we call you? Like an admin, a contracts person? I had zero transactional experience. I had only had litigation experience. And they're like, well, we'll make you our lead contract attorney. no contract experience, you guys, like none. Like I knew nothing. Well, I can't say that. I was highly educated, but I didn't have experience. And so I kind of found the job opportunities just through organic hustle and connections and perseverance, in addition to doing all the things that they recommend that you do to cover your bases, like OCI. And I think I sent out emails. I don't know if I sent out letters, but I kind of did everything. It was a huge onslaught of an effort to get the job.
I'll go next. So a lot of what Alana said, I mean, it's all about hustle. So once I realized that I was not going to get a job through the traditional OCI, I kind of, we keep talking about hustling and all that. Here's what I did to actually do it. So I created a spreadsheet and I looked at, okay, I'm pretty sure I want to stay in the DFW area. Who are go-getter lawyers that I would love to, mimic, I would love to work with. And I kind of created a list. I mean, it's a little bit stalkerish, but like, I remember like I put like Lisa Blue on my list and I was like, okay, how can I get a lunch with her? I mean, she gets 100 emails, an hour, so I remember looking, okay, she's speaking at the BLO on jury trials on this day. And I remember going and, going, okay, on this day, I'm going to go there. And, just going and talking and asking questions to finally being able to, get myself invited to, 2 hours of her time to sit down and pick her brain about things. But I made a spreadsheet of who are lawyers that I want to get on a first name basis with. And then where are the firms that I want to be at? And then I really just kept going to like DBA, DWL, DHPA, I mean, all the Dallas Bar Association and sister bars. And I kind of got to the point where some of my peers in law school kind of made fun of me because they were like, oh, it's Wednesday or Thursday at 5. Nicole's not going to one of the law school functions on campus. She's driving to Dallas and networking at the BLO. I mean, it was kind of funny. And that was brought up a couple of years ago. Like, oh yeah, Nicole, you were always that person at the BLO that like never came to like the fun stuff in law school because you were too busy networking, which is true, but it paid off. So by the end of my 3L year, I kind of created a spreadsheet and I still have it on my Google folder of lawyers that I felt like I had made a meaningful connection with. And I mean meaningful, like I had talked to them at least, like I kind of called it the rule of 3. I had talked to them at least 3 times. Like I feel like they would know my name and I would, reach out to them and be like, can we get coffee or lunch? Because I'd really just like to get your advice and insight. And I really emphasized the words advice and insight. I didn't say, can you please give me a job? Because I think that's implied when you're a law student reaching out to a lawyer. But I, would ask these lawyers to go to coffee or lunch and then ask them about themselves because everyone's favorite topic is about themselves. Let's be real. And so, at the end of my 3L year, like I said, a spreadsheet of about like 40 to 50 lawyers that I had made meaningful connections with. And then I'm not going to lie, I remember like in my remedies class 3L year, typing out like an email, kind of like a form email which was personalized to each individual lawyer. Saying, look, I've really enjoyed meeting you and insert some personal stuff that, I know I talked to them about. Here's my resume. If you hear of anything, I'm going to start sitting for the bar soon. Please, keep me in mind. And I think, in addition, I also, like Abigail did, I sent like hundreds of letters to, and none of those worked out. I mean, do it so it checks the box if you have the time. But those personal emails are what paid off because, I think as I was studying for the bar, like June, July, I know I started getting emails going, hey, we're not hiring right now, but I'll keep you in mind. And I'll never forget the person that connected me to my job, reached out to me a few days before the bar exam and was like, hey, after you take the bar, go on your bar trip, come back and interview, we might be looking. And that's how it happened. But I would not have been able to have sent those emails, or those emails would not have had the same impact had I not gone to all those awkward lunches. And I mean awkward lunches, when you're driving over to the restaurant, hoping that the lawyer picks up the bill because you're broke, and been there, done that. Sitting down, hoping that you don't, say the wrong thing. I'll never forget, I got invited to a restaurant. It was a pho restaurant. I never had pho. I was not good at the chopsticks at the time. It was disastrous. So that was, I remember those things. I've since gotten better. But those awkward lunches, coffee dates, all of that, those emails would not have had the same impact had I not spent the time to get to know those lawyers first. So I would just emphasize, I know we're in a virtual world right now, but seriously, reach out to all of us. And I mean, like if it's an outdoor area, I'll meet you for coffee, but like start doing that kind of stuff. because again, OCIs, I had so many, didn't pan out, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to be okay. So I know I kind of went over my allotted time, but that's that.
So I think everyone who's listening to this panel right now is taking the first step, right, that they need to be taking to land a job, quote unquote, outside OCI. That said, OCI is an incredible experience, right? It preps you for the future. So I didn't network. So because I was in DC, it would be next to impossible for me to network on a Dallas level, like even Texas level, right? So I did a lot of my networking through the American Bar Association. I joined as a student member. I also stalked the tax court because that's where I wanted to be. So every tax court hearing allows students to participate, and we still allow students now virtually to participate in hearings to understand how it works. And we take note because I'm in tax court probably once a month or whatever, and I'll notice a couple students, and there'll be like 3 from the whole country that can join. These are public hearings, and there'll be like 3 that join. And I write down their names because it shows initiative. I also reached out to, I wouldn't call him my formal mentor, but Jerry Beyer is well known in the wills, trusts, and estates field, and he taught me at Texas Tech. I said, hey, Jerry, I'm in DC now. I have an LLM. I'm still looking for jobs. Let me know if anything's posted. Oh, and I have this weird legal question. Would you mind answering it for me? And to this day, he still has funneled me. He's funneled us 2 candidates, one of which we hired from Tech. And he still answered my weird legal questions that I swear only he can answer. But I think using your professors that specialize in the field, especially if you're in a niche field, not just straight up like broad litigation, but if you can narrow it down to business lit or corporate lit or something that's like oil and gas industries, if you reach out to your professors, they usually have a very good understanding of the market because they either speak or they write articles or they network with these folks. I mean, the Jerry Beyer is best friends, or not best friends, but he's very good friends with my shareholder that I work for right now, Stephanie Loomis Price. And the minute I brought up his name in the interview, she was like, oh yeah, Jerry, he's great, So trying to find some kind of connection. I think Elena and Nicole, you mentioned this, to make yourself memorable is really important. Nicole, I think you mentioned, reach out to us. It's awkward, right? Now if you already were having a difficult time finding a job, it's even compounded more with the virtual environment. But I think everyone kind of respects that. And so if you reach out and say, you make a joke of it to someone that you're interested in our firm and just say, I think things are odd in this virtual environment. If you're COVID comfortable, I'd love to grab coffee with you. Or if you're not COVID comfortable, I'd love to set up a FaceTime call and you can laugh how long it takes y'all to figure out how to get both of your faces on the screen, because I do it every day with clients. It's at least a 15-minute technological hip. But, I think there's ways you can do it. And I think especially in this environment, those that are reaching above and beyond to do a little bit more and not giving up just because we're in COVID and we're in a virtual environment are showing the extra. The other thing is be flexible with job postings. Alina, I would think you said that, your job was never posted. And
Right.
I think that's true for a lot of jobs, both in private practice and in-house. Before we post a job, at least at my firm, we kind of have this internal discussion first and like, oh, we're hiring for someone. And my shareholder will come to me and say, do you have anyone? And then she'll go to my other colleagues and say, do you have anyone? And if once we've exhausted all 4 of those, then we post a job. So it's very possible if you've reached out to me 6 months ago, I'll say like, oh yes, there's this girl who blah, blah, blah. And usually there has to be something that sticks with me. There's this one that I remember who was in the horse industry and she really likes horses. And at the time I was like, well, yeah, this is cool, but it has nothing to do with wealth preservation. But I remembered her name 6 months later because I was like, yes, there's a horse girl who likes to do wealth preservation. I mean, that's a frank conversation. It's not an insult, but it made me remember her. And so if you do see a job posting that says, I would say up to 4 years of practice experience, 2 to 4, take a look at it and don't cut yourself out just because you don't have 4 years of experience. Especially in the economy right now, people are more than willing to adjust job postings for the right candidate. If we have a first or second year come in for a 4th year position, and I find that person trainable, teachable, that we can educate them, but they have a personality that just meshes with our team, we'll adjust that job posting down and say, we'll take a second year. 1, because it costs our firm less. And 2, I personally like training people that are younger and experienced because I don't have to kind of pull them from another firm with different habits, not even that they're bad, but just different ways of doing stuff. We can train them from the ground up. So it's really helpful for us. And so don't get discouraged if it's a 2 to 4 year job posting. Still, try to do that personal contact and say, hey, I saw this is 2 for 4. I'm a first year right out of law school, but I'm really interested in it.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly, Abigail. I hired a lawyer for us right out of law school, and that was very unheard of, but she was amazing, and I really believed in her, and I knew that I could train her to do what I needed her to do, and she was open to that. And so, like, we just adjusted the requirements for the job because I really believed in her, and she had personally impressed me. So I really, really, I second that sentiment as well.
Thank you, ladies. I will say, we're coming up at the end of our hour. We have one more question. So if you do have any questions for us, please put it in the Q&A and we will answer it. But I do want to echo that it's not about what you know or who you know. It's about who knows you. And so it's kind of the same sentiment, like establish those genuine relationships and don't just look for a job. Look to build a relationship with these people. So my last question for the panel before we answer any Q&As would be, what advice do you have for law students to get a job outside of OCI? And I guess I'll start with Alana.
Great. To get a job at OCI and to get a job in general, I would just urge everyone to be creative and confident and persistent. Believe in yourself. You went to law school, that you learn wonderful skills that can be, a value add in so many different circumstances, and you don't know what your pathway is, what it's going to bring. So keep taking steps that will add some tools, and you can string together a really wonderful career. So stay open-minded and positive. And, I met with so many people, like all of us have said, people love telling their stories. They love to give back. We were all in your position at one time, and somebody took pity on us and took us to lunch and gave us advice. And, we all want to pay that back and keep the cycle going. So don't count yourself out by not asking for coffee or a call or lunch or whatever. But follow up on that, because I've met with so many law students and so many graduates and so many people at firms. I take the time out of my day, I have a call, I meet with them, and then I never hear from them again. And the ones that follow up are the ones that I help kind of get, help them from further down the road. So be persistent in your pursuit and follow up with people who have taken time to help you out.
Mm-hmm.
And go Stars.
So I would just say, chase the job that you really want to do. My father always told me, do what you love and the money will follow. And that's something that's always stuck with me, is that if you truly enjoy what you're doing and you finally land where you want to be, the money and the salary and all the fun stuff that becomes with a lawyer will come with it. And similar to Alina, take the first step. I will pay for your lunch. I can use it as business development. I've been stuck in my house. I'm happy to take anyone to coffee. Maybe not all 55 of you, but certainly whoever reaches out to me, it might take a week or two for me to get back to you, but I will absolutely do that. And keep being persistent. It's tough out there. And I think we all get that. I think everyone on this panel appreciates that. And I truly think people in private practice and GC positions appreciate the fact that the virtual environment has some hampering to it into networking. But those who make that extra effort are certainly, you can get it noticed.
And so I've actually been jotting down quick, one-line pieces of advice from not only from things that you guys have said, but just remembering. So one is just not to give up, which I think we've all kind of said. I mean, I cannot imagine going through what you guys are going through, having to do things virtually, not having the luxury of these, networking socials that I'm talking about going on right now. But you're already ahead just being logged into this right now. I was so surprised how many people didn't do this stuff in law school, and you're already ahead. So if I could serve as an example, like I said, my fiance and I had shoe boxes full of rejection letters each. And again, rejection letter from my current firm. Do not be discouraged. I know that's so hard, because I remember when I would go on these lunches or meet with lawyers, they just say, quote, keep doing what you're doing and you're doing great. You know, I wish I had done what you're doing. I think I heard that so many times. And I was like, okay, so when is keep doing what I'm doing going to turn into a job? But that would be great. But it is true and it does happen. So just don't be discouraged. Don't take no for an answer. Continue to follow up. And with follow up, I was going to say, sometimes, and I didn't know this as a law student, I just didn't want to bother lawyers. I would send you an email, and I just wouldn't get a response back, and I'd just be like, okay, well, maybe he or she didn't like me, I'll cross them off my list. No, we get so many emails from clients, from opposing sides, everything, that sometimes I need, if you've emailed me and you haven't heard from me in a week, call me or email me again. It's not personal. And I didn't get that as a law student, but now as a lawyer, I'm like, oh, thank you for following up. So sorry. And, I will always respond. So again, don't be discouraged if you don't get a response right away. Third, half the battle is really just showing up and just being at the right place at the right time. So show up, or virtually show up like you're doing now. It'll pay off. And that's kind of my last tidbits of advice, just resilience and follow up.
Thank you. So the question that we have in the Q&A is, I would say all three panelists can answer it. How would you recommend networking or interviewing for students who aren't from a particular area but want to work there post-grad?
Know why you want to work there. I think that's the number one question that I've always gotten. You're from Massachusetts, you lived in Memphis, you went to DC, you came back to Texas. Why do you want to be in Dallas? Why do you want to be in Houston? I mean, just figure out what the connection is to that city is so you can articulate that in your interview. As far as networking, you can still do it virtually. I did a lot of phone calls. I did a lot of snail mail. I love getting letters, mind you. I love getting that personalized letter that says, thanks so much for taking the time out to talk to me on the phone. Here's a picture of me, or here's whatever. That's a little creepy actually. Here's something that has my handwriting on it. So it is difficult, but make sure you know why you want to be in that city, whether it's because you love the stars, because you love Dallas, because you have family, because you have some kind of connection, because employers, it's an investment. Your first through third year is an investment for a private practice law firm. And so they want to make sure if they're investing this money into you, that you're going to stay with that firm for at least a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Have an answer for the why. So when you come across as genuine and thoughtful and prepared, rather than just trying to get a job to get a paycheck. I think that is helpful, but recognize that it's going to be a little bit harder for you, and just kind of accept the suck, so to speak, recognize that you are going against people who they might have family connections or, their neighbor's buddy's son, whatever, and recognize that it might be a little bit more challenging and just stick with it. I mean, I had absolutely no contacts to Dallas, and everyone that in my world was in the Northeast, and I think the first thing I did here, which is so embarrassing, was go buy a pair of cowboy boots that I never wore. But I had no connections here, and just through persistence and, like we talked about, making genuine relationships and being really strategic, ended up building that connection. But I had to recognize that, I didn't go to a Texas A&M, or I didn't go to Texas Tech, or I didn't go to a school here in Texas. I went through a school up north that no one really knew here, and it kind of worked against me a little bit, but then, I'd kind of just push through it.
Nicole, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, I went to law school in the area. I mean, I was driving from Fort Worth to Dallas, so it wasn't, too much of a hassle. I did for a while think that I was going to move back to San Antonio after law school. So I remember I reached out to my career services office at A&M, and they were able to get me a reciprocity at St. Mary's. So that's something that I would also recommend, reaching out to your career services office and tell them, here's the city I want to work in. What options do you have? Because I never would have thought to do that, or to even have that option. And then they would tell me, here's when the San Antonio bar is meeting. And I would I remember I drove down a couple times to meet people. So sometimes you do have to get in your car and drive, but I think it all worked out because I stayed here.
Thank you. And I would just suggest, I had a friend that wanted to practice in LA, so she decided to visit a law school there. for her last year. So she is in with a big broadcasting network. And so I will say, think of that as an option as well, to maybe visit a law school where you finish your degree at another law school in the area. So I think we don't have any more questions. An attendee asked that we share our contact information in the chat. If you could, go ahead and do so. But I just want to thank you ladies for your time and sharing your experiences with everyone. I want to thank all of the attendees for attending this panel when you didn't have to, so we're appreciative of that. And then one last big thank you to DWLA, SMU, UNT, and A&M Law School.